Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the June 3rd, 2022 California Board of Behavioral Sciences Telehealth Committee meeting. My name is Chris Jones, chairperson of the committee. Before we convene, I would like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The Board of Behavioral Sciences will be holding this public meeting in person and via Webex platform. I will announce when we are accepting public comment on the various issues. For each public comment period, we will first be accepting comments from the participants in the audience present in the room. Then the moderator will open the lines as appropriate so that the remote audience members can comment. Each commentator will have 2 minutes to comment. Moderator, would you please provide the audience instructions on how they may participate during the meeting at the appropriate times?
For Webex participants wishing to make a comment, please use the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and type the word comment. Please send that comment to all participants, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. For dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand.
Thank you. Members, during the roll call, please introduce yourself and let the public know whether you are a public or licensed member. Steve, please call roll to establish a quorum.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, let me go Kelly Runasinghe.
Good morning, public member Kelly Runasinger.
And Susan Friedman.
Good morning, Susan Friedman, public member.
And Chris Jones.
Good morning, Chris Jones, LEP member.
All members are present. We've established a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we begin, I would like to remind all speakers to remain on topic when making comments on the agenda items. The first agenda item is in our introductions. Excuse me. This is the first time that staff and public participants can introduce themselves. Introductions are voluntary for members of the public. Staff, please introduce yourself.
Marlon McManus, AEO, Board of Behavioral Sciences. Thank you.
Roseanne Helms, Legislative Manager, Board of Behavioral Sciences.
Steve Sodergren, Executive Officer of the Board of Behavioral Sciences.
Sabina Knight, Legal Counsel for the Board.
Are there any members in the audience that would like to introduce themselves? All right. Moderator, are there any members participating remotely that would like to introduce themselves?
If you would like to introduce yourself, please type comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand. And we do have a request from Karen Heidelbrett. Excuse me. Bear with us just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your mic.
Clinical social worker.
Say that again. I think we missed the first half of what you said.
I just said good morning, Karen Heidebrecht, licensed clinical social worker.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And those are all the requests we have from Webex at the moment.
Thank you, moderator. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar, discussion and possible approval of the March 4th, 2022 committee meeting minutes. Agenda item number 3. Do the board members have any suggested amendments or should the minutes be approved?
This is Christina. I'm chiming in remotely. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I do have an amendment on the very last line of the minutes. I have the adjournment time as PM, and that should be corrected as AM. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? No? Okay.
No, motion first. Motion first.
Can we get a motion to approve the minutes?
I would move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
I'd like to make a correction on that motion. We need to adopt the minutes as amended.
Amended.
As amended.
All right. I'll second the motion.
And then,
Not public. Right. And are there any comments from the public? Moderator, are there any comments from our remote participants?
If you would like to make a comment via Webex, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. We have a hand raise. Bear with us. Rebecca Gonzalez. We have sent you a request to unmute your microphone.
ASW California, and I apologize. I don't see the comment box popping up in general, but I guess I could just do the raise hand feature, but I wanted to point that out. Sorry, I'm off topic right now.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other requests for public comment? Seeing none,
Okay, thank you, moderator. Are there any additional comments from the board? So we will take a vote then on approving the March 4th, 2022 committee meeting minutes as amended. Steve, can you take the roll call?
sure. Chris Jones,
Yes.
Kelly Runasinghe,
Yes.
and Susan Friedman.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you, and motion passes.
All right, thank you, Steve. Next on our agenda is the overview of committee's roles and tasks, agenda item number 4. Roseanne, would you provide us with an overview, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So we just kind of do a little overview of what we've talked about in the past at the beginning of every time this committee meets. So this committee has been in effect for a little over a year and a half now, or about 2 years now. The purpose of the committee is to determine if any of the board statutes and regulations related to the practice of telehealth needs to be updated or clarified. So we've tackled a lot of issues. We have a lot more to tackle in this committee. We've looked at the existing statutes and regulations related to telehealth so far. We've looked at other states' laws pertaining to temporary practice across state lines. We'll be discussing that. We've discussed that at a past meeting. We'll be continuing that today. We're running some legislation regarding clarification of telehealth laws and a telehealth coursework requirement and supervision via video conferencing. And then we're also discussing today a potential guidance document. So issues that we have upcoming to tackle and that we've been talking about are shown in attachment A. Proposed regulation changes that we've decided on so far that would need to go forward to P&A committee and board are shown in attachment B. And so we look forward to continuing our work.
All right, thank you, Roseanne. Any comments from the board members? Seeing none, okay. Are there any comments from members of the audience? All right, moderator?
we are once again accepting public comment via Webex. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users or anyone who doesn't see a comment box, please raise your hand. You can dial *3 if you are on a phone or mobile app. It's the little symbol of a hand. You can toggle the Q&A box with a button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Looks like a little question mark. And at the moment, there appears to be no request for comments.
Thank you, moderator. All right, next on our agenda then is the discussion and possible recommendation regarding stakeholders and board staff telehealth listening session, agenda item number 5. Steve, would you please provide us with an overview?
I would be happy to. So we've got a lot of work here in the telehealth committee, and so one of the things we're looking at is trying to get a better idea of what people are concerned with, what types of things we should be concerned with and maybe want to look further into. And it's a little bit tough to do this in a committee meeting session, so what we're proposing is to do these listening session specifically on telehealth, and what we're presenting today is kind of what I want to look at today is the survey, which will be the first step in organizing this listening session that we're proposing. And these listening sessions will be a chance for stakeholders, all stakeholders, to present to the staff and to whoever joins in. It's not necessarily meant for board members because then it would have to entail doing a full meeting. So it's really for staff to collect information from stakeholders and to identify areas of interest or of concern. The first step, like I said, is we're going to be looking at putting out this survey to get an idea of what interest is out there. Depending on that, we'll be able to hopefully organize it into maybe some topic-related type of presentations, or we might actually additionally see that there could be, if there is enough interest to have more than one listening session. So not everyone who, the one thing to make a caveat here is not everyone who actually, fills out the survey will be necessarily invited to ask to make a presentation, depending on what type of we're really looking at people with expertise or backgrounds in certain areas and want to have kind of like a real formalized presentation, not necessarily just speaking up on certain topics. I don't know if that makes sense, but so what we have is a survey. I'd like you to look at that, if you had a chance to look at that, to see if there's anything you think is missing from that. It's a pretty generic survey, but I think it'll help us collect some good information. And then also really just looking for the guidance if there's anything that you think we should be adding or doing in a telehealth listening session for the planning out. So, questions?
Thank you, Steve. So if I'm, and I just want to make sure that I've got my head wrapped around this. Mm-hmm. So the survey part is to really see kind of what the needs of our stakeholders are, and then to figure out what people want.
Yeah, well, to figure out really what I'm looking at is like we're having these listening sessions. Here's the survey to what interest. Originally, the intent was just to send it out to see are you interested in making a presentation. Trying to capitalize it on a little bit more since we are going to be sending it out, seeing what people's concerns or interests are, and then once again to really identify the stakeholders that are wanting to make a presentation and kind of looking at their expertise also.
And then those presentations are going to be available for everybody, licensees or stakeholder to like sit in on, almost like outreach or kind of.
Correct. It will be just like we're doing here right now. It will be on Webex, and we'll actually it'll be all on Webex. I think we could do that. So that'll be nice. So yes, so anybody can join in. There is restrictions with board members. I have to legally see if board members would want to sit in. I think we would have to look at that, but it's really just for staff. And then stakeholders to listen in. And then what the plan is we will then take all that information. We'll video it so you can actually review it afterwards, but staff will work on documenting all the kind of formalizing that and then presenting that to the committee, and then we can kind of use that as kind of a working document.
Steve, this is going to be September 22nd, correct? That's what you said. I think I've read that.
I don't particularly have a date yet. We were looking in September. I think it was. Did I put that on there? There's no date. Yeah.
Oh, I thought I read September.
Oh no, so we're looking at September for the time frame.
Are you going to send that announcement to everybody who's licensed?
We will be putting it out there on our usual channels. We'll do listserv. We will do Facebook, listserv, Instagram, all our normal process to get it out there. So I'm
wondering also Is there any interest in sending it to retired licensees?
I mean, we might have, we can't, it would be hard to kind of associate or trying to find those emails if they haven't already kind of joined up on the listserv. But definitely, I'm assuming some of those are, some retirees are still on our listserv, so they will receive that. Okay. And then, and I'm also hoping with associations and stuff, they'll kind of get that out there hopefully too.
Yeah, I would hope the associations will send to all the
Nudge,
retired
nudge.
people.
So, yeah.
Steve, this is Kelly. On number 6, do we want to add peer specialist or peer consumer?
So I apologize, my computer went out. Number 6 is the question about
who would you be representing? And then it has a list of private practice, nonprofit, professional.
We can do that.
It might be.
Peer specialist?
Yeah, I think there's some peer consumer agencies that might want to submit some information.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, are there any comments from the public?
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Alley with the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, CAMPT. And first, we would be happy to utilize our resources to promote the survey through our website, our newsletter, and maybe our bi-monthly magazine, depending on when we get the information and that goes out for publication. And we do support the listening sessions and the survey. We think that it's an excellent idea to kind of get additional information on how things are working and what concerns therapists and their employers may have with the utilization of telehealth. And we kind of think maybe it's a good time to pause making any additional policy changes until we get more information from the groups. And we just really, really support this and appreciate the out-of-the-box thinking on conducting these for this issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Moderator, are there any comments from the public?
Yes, indeed. We are open for public comment via Webex. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And our first request comes from Rebecca Gonzalez. Bear with us just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning again, Rebecca Gonzalez with the National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. I also want to ditto what Jen Alley said about the willingness of our association to share information about these listening sessions. And the survey is a great idea. I think it looks good. I guess I was just responding to the comment to adding peer consumer. At first I had to have that explained, and it was what that meant. And it looks like these listening sessions are more for you to get ideas from practitioners about telehealth. But I was wondering or suggesting that I don't know if there's a way to get consumer feedback on how telehealth has been working. So once I heard the peer consumer, it just kind of brought that question about consumers in general. So I just wanted to point that out, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rebecca.
And that appears to be all of our requests via Webex.
Thank you, moderator. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Good. All right. We would like to talk about making a motion. No.
Is it better now? Okay. You don't have to make a motion. If you have any comments or recommendations on the survey, you can give that input to the staff. But if you don't necessarily have to make a motion unless you would like to make any type of recommendation to the full board about something very specific.
Okay. Oh, okay. No, then I think we're okay. We're good to move on. All right. Well, thank you, Steve. We look forward to seeing that survey. All right. Okay, so next on the agenda is the discussion and possible recommendation regarding telehealth best practices guidance document, agenda item number 6. Steve, would you provide us with an overview?
Yes. So in our March 4th, 2022 meeting, the committee was discussing creating a telehealth best practices guidance document to assist employers and supervisors who are utilizing telehealth with their pre-licensees. There was some concern as to do the supervisors know what a proper setting is. There was concerns about, with pre-licensees operating fully through telehealth and getting supervision through teleservices. So the idea was that we would actually put together a best practice document to, give them some ideas of what to look for when you're working with supervisees or pre-licensees in remote settings or teleservice. And so what I have been doing is been looking at some of the documents that are currently out there for best practices for telehealth, and which is a wide range. And really, I think right now we're at a point where I'm ready to put together a document, a very draft document. And the next step after that draft document will be to collaborate with some subject matter experts that we get, third party, to actually look at what we've put together and make, help us to design a document. So one of the things if you see, I was looking at New York State Education Department, which is the licensing agency. They license the therapists in New York. They had a model of a document. It was very basic, but really laid out some good points as to what you should really look for when you're using telehealth. Actually, before I even go into talking about the different ones, really, originally we were looking at the concern that, supervisors have with making placements. But really everything that, has to do with placement really is the basic concepts of what you should be looking for in telehealth. So I think this document might be a little bit different than, these are the things you should look for if you are supervising a pre-licensee in that is doing telehealth. I think it's really, these are things you should look for if you are using telehealth. It applies to, the pre-licensees and your supervisees too, because it's everything that you should be looking at. I hope that makes sense. So I think the document might expand a little bit more than what we originally had. So New York on their website has a really nice kind of basic guidelines for things you should consider, ethical and legal telepractice. The other ones, I was looking at some of the associations, the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists Regulatory Boards, the AMFTRB. They had a really nice document, which has I kind of looking at utilizing their document for a kind of outline of what we would want to look at. They touch on everything I think that is very important, and also the language in those documents are very good. And last, the one thing we did in 2010, the board actually did a study, not a study, but we created a report, and it was for the use of video conferencing and supervision. There's a lot of good information in there already, and I do like the process we went through to develop that actual document. It was a pretty rigorous process. It involved a lot of different stakeholders and experts in that. So right now, at the point where I'm at the point of looking at creating a very draft document, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the difference, the New York, the MFTRB. Just kind of want to get your opinion on where you think we should be going with this, or if there's anything that you saw in those documents that you really liked, or any kind of direction that you may, want to suggest.
So Steve, this is Kelly. One of the things that I really, really liked with the NASW guideline is that it began with ethics, and that was kind of the foundation for its entire guidance. And I think that's really important, particularly in the realm of telehealth. I think the NASW guidance focused on the idea that a clinician, when conducting practice over a telehealth medium, has to reflect the ethics and values of their profession. And for me, that seemed to be very important because of the propensity for possible fraud and exploitation using telehealth. So that's kind of where I'm thinking. And regarding your other comments, I do agree with almost all of them. And I was looking on page 6, what would be page 14 of the packet, page VI 14 of the AMFT guidelines, and inside section 4, it actually has the consent for teletherapy treatment, and there's also some ethics inside that section that I think are very important about communication of risks and benefits of teletherapy services, and accurate and transparent information about the website owner and operator. I think a lot of clinicians kind of cluster into these big groups where they're providing services underneath an overarching agency or medium, and it's important for clinicians, I think, when they're engaging in teletherapy or telehealth, to also understand that the communication coming from that platform also reflects them. And so that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Thank you, Kelly. Steve, this is Chris. I like the idea of doing the broad strokes, because I think you could get lost in the weeds with all of the the different facets of this. I agree with Kelly. I think focusing on ethics is important because of the just how telehealth works, and because it's isolating. I think that sometimes people will forget that they need to follow all the rules because they're not necessarily in like a standard office anymore as they're doing this. So I think that's a great focus. I really like a lot of these documents have really good information, and I think using that as a framework is a great place to start with your draft.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Susan, do you have anything for us?
Well, the only thing is that,
Oh, Mike.
sorry, the only thing that I was thinking of is, I know one of the callers earlier mentioned getting some ideas from consumers, because in addition to the ethics, which is obviously the most important part of what we're talking about and obviously their professionalism for the therapists, consumers, we need to know what the consumer is not getting from this, or feels that they're missing out by having this, because we know telehealth is the future. That's the way it's going to be. So I don't know how we deal with that part.
I was on a live mic there. It's kind of a separate thing, because this is really, like we're talking, it's really the legal and ethical obligations of the actual therapist and the supervisor. And I think we do have on a separate from this, I mean, one of the things we have or at least I have in the back of my list of things to do is venturing down into kind of like consumer guidelines too. And that's not necessarily guidelines, but consumer, what they should look for when they're doing, if they're doing online practice. It's an idea that we have. So really this is just dealing with the therapist, the supervisor, and the guidelines they should follow to ensure that consumer safety, because that's what we're looking for on this end. And it's really all about consumer safety on this part. But I see what you're saying, though.
All right, are there any comments from the public?
Hello again, Jennifer Alley with CAMP. And, we appreciate the development of the guidance document. We'd be happy to review and participate in that. We think anything that can provide, additional clarity for our members and to the public on what the board's expectations are and kind of how they're viewing the utilization of telehealth and telesupervision and who's working where, we think would be helpful. As you know, CAMP had a ton of questions regarding this issue, and so we're looking forward to working with you in the further development of the document. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Moderator, are there any comments from our remote participants?
We are now accepting public comment on agenda item 6. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And our first request comes from John Swanson. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone. All right, John, we've sent you a request to unmute, and you appear unmuted.
Hey, good morning. Sorry for the delay. I was only just raising the question about whether or not for the remote attendees, if the reference packet with attachments is going to be available for our review.
Yeah, all the materials are on the website currently. So you can, if you go to www.bbs.ca.gov, you'll be able to actually see the materials in the meeting section of our website.
All right, and our next request comes from Karen. Bear with us just a moment, and we're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello, my name is Karen Heidebrecht. I'm a clinician, LCSW in private practice, doing telehealth. I wanted to make a suggestion that any best practices document include a section on special populations, such as clients with suicidal thoughts. I feel like there is currently insufficient guidance regarding if or when it would be appropriate to see such a person in telehealth. There was a vague reference to telehealth not being appropriate for clients with suicidal ideation, and as a clinician, it's really challenging to interpret that right now. So in terms of, what's okay, passive, fleeting suicidal thoughts, clearly someone with active ideation would need to be seen in person. So my suggestion would be to have that document simply require the clinician to if they are seeing someone with suicidal ideation, to document their rationale. Because I get feedback from clients when I tell them that I don't think that they would be appropriate for teletherapy because of suicidal thoughts. They tell me that they're just going to lie to the next clinician. And I've heard that more than once. So even if I try to do education around that particular rule. So I really do think we need some more specific guidance on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our next request comes from Delane. Bear with us just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Professional clinical counselor in private practice. And I hear the concerns about the ethical concerns for the guidelines, and I appreciate that. Is there a place where consumers are presently making complaints about teletherapy or telehealth therapy that can be utilized? And that's it.
Well, yeah, we could look at our complaint records and the complaints that we receive. I know that currently right now we don't get too many at all concerning teletherapy. But that is something we can look at and use those as talking points possibly. Oh, and yeah, I think where they, well. So, yeah, I mean, they can make complaints to the board, and that's what, I mean, that information and all that data we have in the background in our enforcement teams, so.
I understood the question as where do people make complaints? But I might be wrong on the question.
Well,
Yeah.
and just to make sure, you can always make a complaint. At the board website, there's an online form you can do actually, if you go onto our website, and I believe it's right out there on file a complaint. So, sorry.
Thank you.
For the clarification.
No, this, yeah. So actually, my question was: is there a place where that we're gleaning that information from? I know that it's our responsibility as licensed individuals to be paying attention and predicting and those kinds of things. But I was just curious if there is a database of actual complaint, our consumers complaining. So that was my question. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Really good. Yep, we have that data.
All right, thank you very much.
And those are all the requests we have from Webex at the moment.
All right, thank you, moderator. Any other comments from the board? Susan?
I know that every licensee is supposed to now by law take a specific number of hours. I'm not sure, is it 3 or 6 in suicide? How many? 6 hours? Okay, and I don't know what they learn in those 6 hours, but I think what that caller talked about is very troubling. And I think that we have to have something very specific about suicide, because if people are going to lie to a therapist so that they can get therapy when they're suicidal, we're in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. This is the intent of this. We can't really get too specific with what we're going to be presenting, but I think this would definitely fit within. One of the important things is to identify if the client, if it's a good fit for telehealth. So I think that we specifically won't be addressing probably the suicide prevention, but it will be in there it's kind of an overbroad range of, this is I think I like the idea of one of the important things to do is to document things, not necessarily for these types of, but yeah, documentation is a good thing that you should do.
And I think that's where the subject matter experts come in.
Oh, yeah.
Who are already doing telehealth. And when they put together this type of guidance document, perhaps items like that may make it onto the sheet or may not in specific or maybe more general terms, perhaps emergency situations or other more general broad terms, because this would be a guidance document for general telehealth.
Mm-hmm. That's true, actually.
Steve, my only other comment on this is, when I worked at the Judicial College, there was something called the bench card packet. It was the Federal Firearms Bench Card Packet, and it was very much like this. It was like a little guidance, except it had different sections to it, and a clinician or a judge could take it. He could have it with him on his desk while he was doing a telehealth session, and if something came up, he just pulled out this little plastic sheet, and it would give him a quick rundown in broad strokes. I can provide that document to you, but it was just kind of an idea for the design that might be helpful.
Okay, if you could provide that, that'd be great. Sure.
Okay. We don't need a motion on that. We're ready to give you the go-ahead. Steve, you already got the go-ahead? All right, good. Keep going. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Oh, actually, is there any? Oh, we've had that. Never mind. That's like me. Okay. Good.
All right. So next on the agenda is the discussion and possible recommendation regarding telehealth clarifications for trainee practicum, Business and Professions Code 4980.36, 4980.37, 4980.78, 4999.32, 4999.33, and 4999.62, agenda item number 7. Roseanne, would you like to give us an overview, please?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Chris. So we talked about this topic last at the March 4th Telehealth Committee meeting, and at the time the committee directed staff to examine clarifying the face-to-face practicum requirement in statute for both marriage and family therapists and professional clinical counselor trainees. So MFT and PCC trainees who are in their master's program for an in-state degree must, as part of their qualifying degree program, they need to gain a specified number of face-to-face practicum experience hours. And it's found in 4980.36 for LMFTs and 4999.33 for LPCCs. And so the law does not specify what face-to-face means. It didn't used to be really a question before COVID, before the video counseling really came into play. Now it appears to face-to-face appears to be anything that's face-to-face, so that could be video or in person, but the law doesn't say that specifically. So a clarification is likely needed. So we're in the process currently of pursuing legislation to clarify that trainees may provide services via telehealth. That's the first thing that this committee did. Previously, the law was silent on that. So now that we've got that going forward, we need to address this question of the meaning of face-to-face practicum hours. And so at the last committee, the committee expressed a desire to direct the staff to draft language amending face-to-face to permit a combination of in-person and video conference hours, recommend that telehealth regulations the board have in place for associates and licensees be followed. The committee stopped short of asking the telehealth regulations be followed for trainees because they're not under the jurisdiction of the board yet, so there's no enforcement mechanism, so it would be a recommendation. And then also in this draft language, include a placeholder sunset date so that we can see a few years down the road how it's working, since this is a new and emerging area. So the draft language can be found in attachment A. There's a few things that research that I did and a few things to consider when we're taking a look at this language. Right now, the language in attachment A, as it's written, makes in-person experience required and experience via video conferencing optional. So the committee should discuss whether this is their intent or if the intent is to make both in-person and video conferencing experience required components of the practicum. Another thing that should be brought into this discussion is older degrees. The language for the language in law for older degrees also references face-to-face practicum experience. There's code sections for degrees that are gained pre-2012, and so what I would recommend at this time is to leave that language alone because those degrees are already gained. So there's nobody actively seeking licensure. We don't want to tinker with it and affect people that already have gotten their education. So recommend leaving that out of it. Another important consideration is our language in section 4980.78 for LMFTs and 499.62 for LPCCs that pertains to applicants with an out-of-state degree. So right now, the language in that also requires what says face-to-face practicum experience for these out-of-state degrees. So the committee should also discuss whether corresponding amendments should be made to these sections, kind of keeping in mind that there's really not been a national standard that addresses face-to-face practicum yet. So we want to be mindful of that so as not to eliminate people from out of state. You know, we're kind of still early in this shift toward video conferencing that occurred during COVID. So in looking at research on national standards, I found it's very much kind of in flex. A lot of the national standard documents are pre-COVID. One of them has been updated since then. Looking at the several other states' practicum laws, it really just it just says they have to have so much practicum. It doesn't. Other states' laws haven't addressed yet that I've seen. You know, X number of hours has to be video conferencing or something like that. So it's kind of a new emerging sort of issue. I looked at the three sort of national accrediting agencies, which is KCREP for LPCCs. We don't require KCREP accreditation in California. The KCREP document was the most recent standards that they have out there are 2016, although they are currently working on a 2024 update, and they're going through various drafts that they're posting online right now. So taking a look at the KCREP document, the 2016 version, it discusses that on the page 15, 16 of that document. It doesn't appear to address in-person or video conferencing. It does have a definition of direct service saying that 40 hours of direct service are required with patients. And then their most current draft that they have up there right now for the 2024 update that they're working on also does not appear to address a breakdown of do any of the practicum hours need to be via in-person or video conferencing. So that's still unresolved for KCREP. For COAMPT, which is the Marriage and Family Therapy Accreditation Agency, they actually recently did an update of their accreditation standards. January 1, 2022 is when they released that document. And page 24 of those standards address teletherapy and practicum. Students are required to gain 300 hours of direct clinical contact. And that document, it states that they are allowed to have teletherapy in that practicum as long as the school has, or the site has, policies and procedures in place to support the student teletherapy practice and supervision with attention to the applicable legal and ethical standards. So it is allowed with COAMPT. And then last, I'd like to talk about social work interns. Social work interns are not really included in this discussion. We don't in our law. It's different than for LMFT and LPCC applicants for social work, because social work is the only one that has a universally sort of nationally accepted national standard. So all social work degrees must be accredited by CSWE, the Council of Social Work Education. So we don't go into detail in social work law detailing out specific education requirements as much, and we don't detail the practicum requirements, because that is what CSWE accepts. We accept that, and it's been that way for a long time for the social work. It's a little bit more established as a national accrediting agency. So it's not addressed for social workers. We don't require any specific amount of practicum. It's whatever CSWE accepts. So CSWE, they have their document from 2015, so it's a little bit older on their site. They require 900 hours of field education for master's programs. It specifies in-person contact, and then they have kind of like what they call an interpretation guide on the website, and they say that the in-person contact may include use of digital technologies. So that's what that document says. They did a FAQ document in December of 2021 for how schools could react due to the COVID pandemic. And they did address the allowability of meeting field experience hours via telehealth, again saying that it can include the use of digital technologies, so that's acceptable. So I just wanted to bring that in there. We're not recommending any changes be made for social work interns at this time. And so I guess we can open up the discussion to the language. In attachment A, I would like to draw attention. We received 2 letters on this topic. They are both posted online and have been placed at the front entrance to the meeting today and handed out to committee members. One of the letters is a joint letter from CAMP and CalPIC, and then the other letter is a letter that is a MFT trainee, Monique Verrier. She asked us to share her letter with the meeting, and she is an MFT PCC trainee from National University. So with that, I will open it up to discussion.
All right, thank you, Roseanne. So I mean, I think that we've heard from a lot of our stakeholders about the effectiveness of doing supervision through video conferencing. You know, the surveys have said that there really hasn't been a lot of difference that they've seen in the effectiveness over time. I'm kind of old school. I like the in-person. So I'm leaning towards the language that you have here is, you know, using either in-person or a combination of both. I think that allowing that flexibility for trainees is probably a good thing, and that seems to be the trend that's going around the country. So, I mean, it seems to make the most sense to me. Kelly or Susan?
I concur with the vice chair. I think the language lends itself to reasonable interpretation. I reviewed both of the letters, and I think that the language as phrased would allow for allowable accommodation in the instance of illness or some form of disability that would impede, a complete face-to-face experience. So that's kind of my initial thought. I'd be interested to hear what the representative from CAMPT, how they would reconcile the position in their letter with the idea that there are clinicians that are utilizing telehealth because of inherent disability. I mean, during public comment.
I'm sure that Jennifer will have plenty to say. We'll get to her in just a second. Yeah. Susan?
I'd like to hear what Jennifer has to say about this.
All right. Well, I guess with that being said, we will open it up to public comment. Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment?
Thank you. So this is Jennifer Alley with CAMPT, and I appreciate the inclusion of our letter. I know we got it in the same day that you guys published everything on the website, so we appreciate the distribution. And I do have a couple of comments. So one, we do recommend that there be some in-person experience hours be established for trainees utilizing telehealth. We have not incorporated into our discussions the disability aspect, which I do think is important. That being said, right, consumers always have the right to choose in person. And so if we allow for a clinician to be 100% telehealth only, then from the consumer perspective, if they ever determine that they want to have in-person therapy, then in theory they would have to change therapists and lose that continuity of care. And so I think we need to be really careful when we talk about everybody's needs, how complicated this issue quickly becomes. And so as I stated earlier, I think we might want to wait until after the listening sessions to kind of move forward with significant policy changes regarding telehealth and trainees. I would also like to add or just kind of comment that the definition for face-to-face in this proposal is just a little bit different than the definition in legislation this year regarding remote supervision. And so we're going to have two different definitions for what face-to-face means for trainees and associates. And so we think that will cause confusion moving forward. It's just, it has the same kind of context, but it's just a little bit different. And so that might be something that we might want to look at. And so those are all of our comments for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer, hold on a second. We have a question for you.
I was going to ask a question of Steve.
Oh, sorry, I thought she said you.
You could tell us. I mean, you said you've gotten very few comments about telehealth, but I'm just curious. I mean, what kinds of things have we heard? Anything?
Yeah.
So this discussion is about the practicum, not about telehealth complaints. Yeah. So we have to kind of stay on topic. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Moderator, would you open up the comment section for our remote participants? Thank you.
We are open for public comment via Webex. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And our first request comes from Monique. Bear with us just a moment, and we will send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, hi. Yes, I'm the trainee who submitted the letter that you have in your possession about trainees being able to continue with telehealth therapy. And there were just a few things that came to mind when I was thinking about this topic. We were talking about the fact that that client should be able to choose whether or not they want to see someone in person or through telehealth. And I just wanted to comment that I have quite a few clients myself who are only able to do therapy through telehealth. And that would restrict their ability to have therapy in this way. One of the things that's come up that has not come up before that we're learning about through COVID is long COVID. And so we have, I have clients who have long COVID and they are not physically able to make the commute to therapy, and this is their only option. I have had quite a few comments from clients that this is their only option. And so I would just like that to become, something that's readily available for them. I work at community colleges where we do short sessions. So we do only about 5 to 8 sessions. And when people sign up for telehealth, they are agreeing that they are okay with doing telehealth for that amount of time. So for the 5 to 8 sessions, if they renew it again, they can choose to do in person if they want to do another set of sessions, and they know that they might have to get another therapist for that time. I also just wanted to comment about trainees who have disabilities. I am one of those people, and I have been doing telehealth with my clients so far in Practicum. And I am not done. I'm about halfway through my hours, and I would like to continue doing that. It's something that is medically for me not an option to do actual in-person therapy at this time, while I'm waiting for medical research to catch up and for me to have some interventions that might allow me to do in-person therapy. So this is something that is also something to think about, is the disabilities of the trainees themselves, and so I'd just like that to be considered. There's further information in my letter regarding that issue. And thank you. I appreciate you letting me comment.
Thank you.
And those are all the requests we have for public comment at the moment.
Thank you, moderator. So, Roseanne, I think I have a question. Just to kind of elaborate a little bit on what Jennifer brought up about not making policy changes until we hear from the listening session. What sort of timeline are we on as far as needing to update the language within the law right now? If we don't move forward soon, like what does that mean for us?
So the timeline that we're on for legislation for next year, which legislation for next year would start in January, we would ideally need to have board approval by November. Not that we want to rush it because of that. However, we've been discussing this for about 1.5 years now in terms of the face-to-face contact is unclear, and it's going to continue to be unclear. Right now, the way that it kind of would read is it allows in-person or video conferencing. So if we want to have some component of in-person, I would suggest using the language that is suggested today, because it implies that you cannot have all video, but you need to have some face-to-face, but it's kind of at the discretion of the school and supervisor to make that determination. So that's kind of the timeline we're on and the situation that we're faced with.
And we don't have a board meeting in September, October either.
I think we have a board meeting in
August,
August and then in November. Yeah.
August would be August would be before the listening sessions, right?
Yeah, and I don't expect that this is really something that's going to come up in the listening sessions. We've kind of researched what's out there in terms of the requirements. I think it really is just a clarification issue. The listening sessions are really, I think, to look at more larger topic areas, such as online telehealth companies and other large issues related to telehealth. Not to we've kind of already, I think, hashed this out as much as it really can be, and it's just, we're kind of at a point where we just need to clarify it or not.
Got it. Thank you, Lizanne.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Are we at the point where we can talk about a motion?
Yeah, we can talk about a motion. We should also, I think, talk about, if you want to proceed with this language, whether that should include older degrees, which I recommend not, and also education gained out of state. And I would recommend not making that change right now so as not to eliminate people coming from out of state where things haven't caught up yet.
Right, okay. Would you be able to give us language for, because I agree, I think that the language as you've written it is good, and the recommendations that you make are great.
Okay, then I would recommend the motion is to bring the proposed language to the Policy and Advocacy Committee for consideration.
I would like to make a motion that we bring the
proposed language shown in attachment A.
Bring the proposed language in attachment A to the P&A committee?
Yes.
For consideration.
I'll second that motion.
Any comments, right? Any comments on the motion? Any comments from the public on the motion?
Jennifer Alley with CAMP. We still, remain concerned about moving forward with changes to the practicum at this time. So I just want to get that on record. And even though the way that it's drafted, it still could mean that a combination of either would be 1 hour of actual in-person, face-to-face experience, and the remaining practicum hours are done via video conferencing, which just causes us some concern prior to somebody, acquiring their degree and then becoming an associate. And so I just want to make sure that that's on record. So thank you.
Thank you. Moderator, do we have any comments from the public?
We are once again open for public comment via Webex. If you would like to make a comment on the motion, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to return to the motion?
Yes, thanks, moderator. All right, Steve, would you take the roll?
Okay. To have to restate the motion. Just take roll call. Okay. Okay. So Susan Friedman?
Yes. Oh, hold on.
Oh, no, hold on.
Oh, was it on?
Oh, yeah. I heard you loud and clear. Thank you. And Chris Jones?
Yes.
And Kelly Ranasinghe?
Yes.
Excellent. Motion passes.
Okay, next on the agenda is discussion and possible recommendation regarding draft statutory language for a temporary practice allowance. Agenda item 8. Roseanne, would you provide us with an overview, please?
Yes, I will. So a temporary practice allowance is something that this particular board does not have, that a lot of other boards in other states do have. And so we thought we would explore looking at the possibility of a temporary practice allowance. We had talked about this at a previous telehealth meeting, and so now we're kind of circling back. We've done a little bit more research and have some draft language to share today, just to kind of see what everybody thinks about the draft language. What components do you like? If you like it at all, what components do you not like? So right now, a therapist must hold a valid and current California license or registration if the individual is engaging in therapy via telehealth with a client who is physically located in California. There are no exceptions to this. So if a client is traveling here, we get calls a lot of times from therapists saying, hey, my client's going on vacation in California for 2 weeks, or has a family emergency and is going to be out here for a few months. Can I practice with my patient? No, is the answer, basically. So that seems, in some circumstances a bit harsh. So we thought we would look at what some other states do to address this. some states do allow flexibility, and so I've compiled kind of a chart of some other temporary practice allowances of other jurisdictions. One is the Board of Psychology here in California, kind of our sister board. They have a 30-day temporary practice allowance. A lot of other boards have different features. So what I kind of did is I looked at the various features in the law of other jurisdictions, and I kind of pulled out some of the ones that I thought were interesting and useful, and so that's the draft you see today. A couple of things we would need to kind of, this is a big, there's a lot of, if we were to move forward with something like this, there's a lot of technical things we would need to discuss as well. You know, implementation of this, right now we've got, you know, people self-attesting online. It would probably be a self-attestant where we would all auto-acknowledge on Breeze that they have registered to do a temporary practice for 60 days, and it would give the time frame allowed. You know, there's a question about the number of allowances. Right now, the draft only includes licensees, not registrants, so that's another topic. But I just kind of wanted to throw something out there so we could start and kind of see where this conversation goes. So I'll open it up for a discussion.
So I kind of like Arizona's regulation. It seemed pretty tight. I think 90 days is too long, but at the same time, I think the District of Columbia's no limit, you know, works for the District of Columbia because it's kind of stuck between all those states, but it wouldn't work for us. It's very important, particularly for counties on the east side of California, which abut Nevada, Arizona, and Mexico. And so I think if I had to look at it, I would probably follow the direction of the Board of Psychology, which is 30 days with a client disclosure, however, and the requirements that they would be abide by all laws in the state of California. And that would allow someone to get kind of a closeout therapy session within 15 to 30 days. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, Roseanne, I really like it too. You know, in the draft language that you have, it mimics a lot of what the Board of Psychology said, but I think that you've added in extra conditions that I think will help with consumer protection. And I agree that, especially in the world that we live in now with telehealth, having access to a client who has gone on vacation or they're out of state for a short amount of time, or clients that are coming in, I think that this is a great step with, even with all the work that we did with the portability issues, you know, from state to state. So I really do like how this is started, and I think that it is really important for clients who aren't physically in California to have access to the therapists and the mental health supports that they need if something comes up. And, you know, it would be awful, and I'm sure it's happened, where, you know, somebody's having an issue, they're out of state, and they need to go seek services from someone who they're not familiar with. So for continuity of care, I think it's really important that, you know, California, or our board, catches up with everybody else. So I really like where this is headed.
I'm really curious, Roseanne, when you said sometimes people ask you, I'm shocked that they ask.
Right, yeah, no, it is a very common question that I get, and other staff members come to me because, you know, we have all kinds of variations and situations that people call to explain, and we don't have that allowance in our law. And you know, during COVID, there was kind of a little bit of an emergency way that you could do it through another agency, but it's something that a lot of other states have, and it seems it's a little harsh to say no, you know, for something like a vacation when somebody's asking.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Any comments from the public?
Hello again. I think this will be the last comment for today. This is Jennifer Alley with CAMPT. So we think that this makes sense, especially when we're talking about access, even temporarily, if somebody needs to access their provider, they need to access their provider. And so we appreciate the thoughtfulness in developing this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Moderator, do we have any comments from the public remotely?
We are once again open for public comment via Webex. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And our first request comes from Rebecca Gonzalez. Bear with us just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello again, Rebecca Gonzalez from NASW California. Want to thank the committee for this discussion, and we do absolutely agree that we do need to make a change in this area and have a temporary allowance. For those clients that are out of state and want to, transition, need that transition time to actually get a new therapist, I would want, or just in general, I think this provision, instead of 30 days, that 60 days might be a better time frame to give people adequate time to make sure they have continuity of care. But other than that, thank you for this discussion, and I look forward to this change in law.
Thank you, Rebecca.
And that is the only request via Webex that we have at the moment.
Thank you, moderator. Any other discussion from the board? I think we're ready to move forward.
Before we do that, I want to kind of go through a couple of the issues I mentioned previously, since it sounds like the language, everybody likes the language. Just a couple of things I wanted to point out. This would allow, we wrote this to allow one allowance per year. The reason that we, if somebody, the thought being, for the 60 days, so that it allows them to see one client. If somebody came back later in the year and had another client, we would think that at that point, if you're going to have multiple clients, it would be appropriate to seek a California license. If we allowed multiple, it would kind of open up for abuse. If somebody's requesting multiple allowances to continue seeing clients, then getting with our streamlined license process, they should be passing the law and ethics and taking the California specific coursework if they're going to use it that way. So that's the reasoning kind of behind the one allowance. We would kind of need to figure out, Steve, how that would work in Breeze. It would be a self-attest, so hopefully there'd be some way that we could make sure that they only got one allowance. And then I just wanted to point out, this is only written as licensees. We figured we would start this for licensees. Registrants are a bit more complicated because they're under supervision, things like that. So that is something to consider, but we just thought, as a starting point, let's start it out for licensees. If we feel it's appropriate later to expand it to registrants, then we can consider that later.
No, I think that makes sense. I guess a question I would have too is, how do we monitor it? With regards to, it's almost, I would think it would be impossible, because you'd have to, if I have from out of state and I have a client that's coming to California, I have to let the board know that I'm seeing them, right? So it's really about the ethics. We're trusting that we're working with ethical people.
That is correct, and I think that Steve and I kind of have to work out a little bit more in the office, whether when we're doing a fiscal for this, if we want to ask for a position to monitor it, or that's workload that we could absorb, because we would have, there is the potential somebody could sign up more than once. So we need to think about that in creating the Breeze system. So yeah, there's a few things like that to consider.
Roseanne, can I ask a quick question? Where does it say that they can only have a single client?
It says 60 consecutive days in any calendar year. Well, it doesn't say they can only have a single client. It says they can have 60 consecutive days.
So it's a one-shot deal.
Yes, so basically they would attest, they would go sign on that they were going to do therapy. We would have their name, and their information. That's going to give them a window which they would get a printout, basically like sort of a receipt in Breeze that says you were authorized from, you know, March 1st to April 30th. That's your 60 days.
Okay.
So they could, I mean, they would probably, most people would probably only see one, but somebody might happen to have two. Maybe they're seeing a family. Or something like that. And the reason that it's consecutive is that it really needs to be consecutive, because we don't want to say 60 days and then somebody decides that, okay, well, I'm not going to get a California license and I'm going to see every Friday, I'm going to see for 52 weeks in the year, I'm going to see all of my clients in California on Friday. We don't want that loophole.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, are we, I think we're ready to move forward with the motion. Nope, Susan has a question.
I mean, this is like a dumb question. Is it my rule that when we make a decision, that it then has to go to the policy and advocacy?
Yes.
Advocacy.
Mouthful, huh?
That is the way it always is done?
Yes. Yes, it's just because we're really discussing kind of the guts of policy issues here, so the telehealth is really a special committee to kind of like really hammer out the details, and then the policy and advocacy committee will look at it and then give feedback, and then the board has to finally approve it. So it's really just to have a lot of eyes on it so we can kind of fine tune it through the process, so that hopefully we get a piece of legislation that's, you know, well supported and well thought out, and everybody's had time to really think it through and give feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, would you like to wordsmith a motion for us?
Sure, I recommend that the committee direct staff to take the language in attachment A to the Policy and Advocacy Committee for consideration.
I will make a motion that we direct staff to take the language as written to policy and advocacy, oh my goodness, advocacy and attachment A?
Correct.
Second the motion.
Any comments, public comments? Moderator?
We are once again open for public comment, this time for agenda item 8. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, would you like to move back to the motion?
Yes, thank you, moderator. All right, if there's no other comments from the board, and Steve, would you mind taking the roll call vote?
Well, not at all, thank you. And Kelly Ranasinghe?
Yes.
Chris Jones?
Yes.
And Susan Friedman?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Steve. All right, next on the agenda is suggestions for future agenda items, agenda item number 9. This is a chance to suggest topics to be included in future board meeting discussions. Do any members have any additional, or any board members have additional items for future agendas?
Yes, Honorable Chair. The Chief Executive had such a great idea. And BBS already puts out a guidance on how therapy never includes sex. It's just a quick warning guidance for consumers. I think it would be wonderful for staff to develop a quick one-pager for consumers on safe telehealth. You know, what do I need to know if I'm engaging in practice with a telehealth therapist or a telehealth clinician? Doesn't need to be like a massive guidance, just kind of like a one-pager that you could put on Facebook on a JPEG that could be shared through our stakeholders, so that consumers who are entering into a telehealth relationship are like, okay, these are the things I need to think about. These are the limitations of telehealth practice. Should I be going into telehealth practice, or should I be looking for an in-person physician? Just like a real quick couple bullet points, and I think that would be wonderful to share with some of our consumers. That's it.
Thank you. Susan?
I think we touched on the subject before, but I actually think the subject of suicide is in what we should be thinking about, something very separate about that. And we should come up with some thoughts about how that should be dealt with, because clearly it just doesn't fall under telehealth. It's its own separate subject. And I think that we have to address that and think about exactly what we want to do. And I would assume that therapists really want help in that area also.
Thank you. Are there any participants in the audience that have suggestions for future agenda items? Moderator, would you open up the public comment?
We are open for public comment via Webex for future agenda items. If you would like to make a suggestion, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to return to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. And our final agenda item is public comment for items not on the agenda. As a reminder, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Are there any public comments not on the agenda? Moderator?
We are open for public comment for public comments not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please type the word comment into the Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and send that comment to all participants. Dial-in users, please dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And our first request comes from Miranda Fury.
Hi, I just have a question about the waiver. It's set to expire June 30th, and I'm wondering the in-person, the telehealth supervision waiver set to expire June 30th, and I know there's emergency legislation pending. I'm just wondering if we could get an update on that, or if you have any information, because it does affect, a lot of people are doing telehealth right now through supervision. Certainly clients, as another commenter mentioned, there are clients who cannot attend therapy unless it's through telehealth. Associates who cannot attend supervision unless it's through telehealth, and supervisors who are also dealing with limitations and need telehealth to provide supervision. Thank you.
Yeah, just really quickly, it's set to expire, and we are still seeking that urgency legislation, and that's kind of the only update I have right now. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And those are all the requests we have for public comment via Webex.
Thank you, moderator. Okay, so our next agenda item is adjournment. I want to thank everybody for participating today. The time is 11:24 and the meeting is adjourned.